Now, I want to talk about the economic link because this mayor, Rahm Emanuel, by the way, a Democrat, so all we hear is get the Democrats back in office. Don't get me wrong, I think Trump's awful. But these are, a lot of these cities have Democratic rule, Democratic mayors acting like extremist Republicans. And you have Rahm Emanuel, who's essentially, it seems, put all the money in the world in a 10 to 15 block radius, beautify it, leave the rest of the city really to rot, and then have the police, like you said, parole those neighborhoods where there is no investment.
Absolutely. Here in Chicago, we absolutely have a tale of two cities. After you leave here, I challenge you to go down Halsted Avenue from 119th to 35th Street. Their ideal of beautification for the black community is gun violence memorial crosses that litter our street. But when you go on the north side, you find flowers and art and signs of creation and beautification. But on top of that, with this administration, there is a real insidious plan besides the TIF money that is unfairly allocated for these wealthier communities. We have communities, Jordan, that don't even have a grocery store. We actually have, this is a major metropolis, and the ideal that we don't have a grocery store to buy fresh fruits and vegetables, and we have what we call runaway gentrification. We have black people are not only just being taxed to death, black people are packing up their truck, man, like Henry Fonda in The Grapes of Wrath and just being written out of town. We can't afford the rents, the racial profiling. 50 schools have been closed where our children now have to matriculate to another neighborhood. We've had so many children, beyond the atrocity of just closing schools, we've had kids die because they have to go into another neighborhood that they're unfamiliar and encounter a rival gang, so to speak. And we do take some responsibility in the black community, but when you're cognizant of this, and with the prison industrial pipeline, and you're sending our kids from school to prison, and there's no real public safety plan, it's really an insidious plan, and this mayor has failed us terribly.
Well, it seems like an attempt to implement modern-day segregation, because when you're creating gentrification on steroids to bring in young professional white people, to bring in developers, to make it so only, I mean, not that there's no black people that live downtown, but largely white people. I did an interview yesterday with Amara Enya, who said the city is getting more white. So it seems like an attempt, like we've seen in Flint, in St. Louis, Cleveland, Milwaukee, we could go on, to push the black people out.
No, this is worse than that. It is actually worse than that, because right now in Chicago is the most segregated city in all of North America. There is no city. In Chicago, we have 70 distinct neighborhoods. You can ask anybody who casually walks by, where are you from? And they're going to give you a particular neighborhood. They're not going to say south side, west side, east side, north side. So that's by design. So you take a community that's already segregated racially, and then on top of that, with runaway gentrification where you're pricing people out. There's a conspiracy of the banking industry where they're not giving small business loans. There's some institutional racism.
Which you've seen, being that you're a banker.
Yeah, which I've seen firsthand as a banker as it relates to redlining and institutional racism. So every unsavory act is actually on steroids here in Chicago, and it can be traced back to the 1% and Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
And talk about the psychology, because if the police are saying we need assault weapons, this and that, obviously they're saying we're under siege and we're under threat and we have to fear for our lives. But I don't see, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see many attempts on officers' lives. I see them shooting first, especially people running away from the back. I mean, you look at Maurice Granton, a 24-year-old. Yeah, he was running, but there's non-lethal ways to stop somebody from running. They shot him from the back as he was climbing a fence. Then while he was on the ground, I believe, he was shot again. And you saw taunting going on as well from the police as he was on the ground. That's what I heard on the audio. It seems like there's this irrational fear that is breeded in racism.
No, unequivocally, you know, and it's just not Maurice Granton. Before that, there was Pierre Laurie, there was Ronnie Man Johnson, there was Paul Green, a virtual laundry list of black boys that were shot in the back that are running for a life because, to be quite frankly, the prevailing opinion that although we're here in front of the police station, this is not a police station, Jordan. This is a hunting lodge. And black boys are the prey, and they have targets on their back. There's a certain amount of evil that persists, even with me. I'm a banker and an activist. I'm a college graduate and Oxford Rhodes Scholar. And yet some of the things that is said to me as an activist, someone, you know, that by the grace of God, that have had some success and contribute to this society. So if they talk to someone like me like that, can you imagine the reverence and the dignity or lack of that they have for our kids who are just trying to survive?
You've had to sit with mother after mother after mother that lost a child from police killings. Can you kind of talk about, I mean, what is this doing to the community? Because I talked to high school boys yesterday who literally feel almost like it's not their city. They're afraid, but they also feel like they're the other in their own city.
It is the other. I am an advocate for what we call the unwanted sorority. The unwanted sorority is a group of black and brown mothers who share a common bond. Their sisterhood is based on the fact that their children have been murdered by police. It's such an horrific scene. You know, I would share when I was called to the home of Betty Jones. Betty Jones is a 55-year-old mother and grandmother that was murdered for simply just opening up her front door. Just to see a blood-spattered, you know, the mayor and the city, they did not send an hazmat team to clean this up. I got a call from the mayor, and he was on vacation in Cuba. And I watched these children in a blood-spattered apartment, a home filled with ammonia and bleach, taking turns scrubbing up their mother's blood off the floor, only to be resaturated by their tears. You know, this sort of horror. And that's something else that we do at the Tree of Life. We provide trauma counseling for these families. A lot of times it's the mothers or the fathers or the children. It's just horrific, brother.
You know, we're not just talking about de-investment by design. You're also talking about the police department the city of Chicago has paid over almost $1 billion in settlements just for these for these killings of black men. And I mean, that's not to mention the debt, because they got to borrow the money to pay off these settlements. So all of this money, all of this murder is costing not just lives, but the city of Chicago any investment for actual working people.
Yes, why not just transform the Chicago Police Department? As a taxpayer, I would rather not be doing this, Jordan. I would rather go back to banking and being an insurance executive and knowing that everybody is being treated with a certain amount of dignity and respect. And with the Tree of Life, we could concentrate on financial literacy or some other things, not civil rights violations. And so the fact that the city has paid out so much money in settlements kind of lets you know how systemic this is, that you would rather, and it's gotten so bad, is that they insult black people, and they say now that, oh, black people are engaging in the ghetto lottery. says somehow we are sacrificing our lives for a payday. Somehow black people are not adhering to verbal commands from the police and putting themselves in harm's way. This is the type of skullduggery that the police and have sunk to as it relates to public relations, to somehow make us seem like less and the lives of our children to seem less.